Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. This is Football at 4.
Every Monday and Wednesday, Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast joins us. And, of course, on Mondays, they drop the latest edition of the Inside the Birds pod. So if you're subscribed, make sure you download, check out all the information on there. Mondays and Thursdays. Also, don't forget about Jason Avant, Quentin Michael, Q&A on Wednesdays. All that and more from the guys over at the Inside the Birds podcasting network. And Geoff Mosher joins us live with a wonderful background. Nice little background there. Geoff, how you doing?
Good, Josh. We had this a while back, but I had to move my home studio around 5 different times. So I finally was able to bring this sucker back. It's nice to see it.
So the side effects of having children has affected your ability to have a banner up. Is that correct?
Children plus pandemic plus everybody home. Yes, that is a toxic mix for having a one situational place in the house.
Well, we will hope for your sake that you have finally settled into your new home in the house. How about that?
Sounds good to me. I hope so too.
So, Geoff, to me, overall, there's a lot of positivity out there about the Eagles, aside from the handful of idiots who apparently think that the second half of a preseason game matters in the grand scheme of things, or the people who are saying that we're all nuts because we're actually finding positive things to talk about. But I feel like, to me, I don't think we can talk enough about one of the things that you and Adam brought up on the podcast this morning, which is the fact that you had a preseason game that went smoothly, and to some people that may seem like, oh, well, you're just making... No. Literally, this team had problems doing simple things last year, and it's nice to see a football team run like a well-oiled machine for once in a long time.
Yeah, certainly. And, you know, we make all of our statements under the umbrella of it's just the preseason, but fair enough. The first game, new coaching staff, new head coach, what you're looking for is clean, crisp decision-making, play, substitutions, anything that goes on during the course of a game where it requires the head coach and the defensive coordinator to be on their cues. And I thought that they were. I thought that you did not see any, for Rick Sirianni to go through different personnel formations from 11 to 12, not have any problems there. I didn't think that there were any issues. I thought he actually, not only just personnel formations, but I mean, there were times where he was even spread. I mean, he showed a lot of different looks. So, and there were no issues there. Nothing that I thought needed to be challenged that he didn't challenge. There weren't that many close plays anyway, but time management looked good to me. Josh, I think the one big question you come out of it with, there was an opportunity. I think there were 4th and 5 inside the 30-yard line of the Steelers. They went for the field goal, 47 yards. Fine, you got to get Jake Elliott his work in too. But what is Nick Sirianni going to be on 4th down in comparison to Doug Peterson? I don't know that any head coach following in the footsteps of Doug Peterson is going to be as aggressive on 4th down, and even with going for 2 after touchdowns. But I also know that was a big part of their success in 2017. It's a big part of what this organization has preached from an analytics standpoint. But the head coach is the head coach and is the one who makes the decisions. So we'll have to see in regular game situations, right, if he is going to sometimes push the pedal a little bit, go full throttle in those 4th and makeable situations.
Do we read anything into, speaking of Sirianni, the fact the offense targeted the tight end 11 out of 28 times on Thursday night?
I don't know. I mean, certainly the tight end, you went into camp wondering if Jalen Hurts was going to have a good chemistry with his tight ends. And I would say so far into camp, he probably has had his best rapport with the tight ends, not only in camp, but also in the preseason game. As you saw, Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert targeted fairly often, and Ertz dropping that 3rd down pass. So that opens up the question, well, what happens if Zach Ertz isn't on the team going forward? And also, is this also a byproduct of the fact that at wide receiver, they just have not had the consistency that they've wanted? Some of that is injury related, Devontae Smith being out. But Jalen Reagor obviously was not a much of a factor for the first week of camp as he got his conditioning back. John Hightower has now been hurt. Greg Ward is Greg Ward. Travis Fulgham has seemingly been up and down. I mean, nothing that really jumps out. And of course, Quez Watkins has had a nice camp as well, and certainly a good preseason game. But I don't know that Quez Watkins is all of a sudden going to be your number 1 or number 2 receiver. I think there's a little bit too much being made after that first game, and even after a decent camp, about what he's going to be this year.
Yeah, no offense to Quez Watkins, but I said this on Friday last week. I saw the Quez Watkins play every year in college football for the last 5 years. The throw out to the fast guy on the bubble screen. Like, yes, it's great the Eagles executed it. It's great. But I mean, at some point, we got to realize if you watch enough college football, there's a fast dude on every team that catches the bubble screen and runs 70 yards for a touchdown every week in college football. So no offense to Watkins, but I think I'm more complimentary of the other players who executed the play that I have of him on that specific play.
It's a great point, and one that we made in Inside the Birds. First of all, it was a great check and call by the coaching staff and Joe Flacco. The Steelers were blitzing a whole lot. That's a great blitz beater type of play. So kudos to Sirianni, Steichen for having it there in the playbook. Flacco for checking into it. Brett Toth, left tackle, who I was really concerned about because I knew he was going to get in the game early after Mailata came out. I thought he and the second string offensive line handled themselves really well there. And there was also good blocking from Richard Rodgers on that play and Jalen Reagor. So I agree with you. If the one thing we knew about Quez Watkins going into the year, even last year, was that he's super fast. And that's really the only question that was answered from Quez Watkins on that particular play. You saw him catch the ball, and you saw that he's super fast. But I think it's a better testament that he's caught more balls in camp, that he got a chance to run with the first team recently, that he's been a little bit more reliable. Now, Josh, it's my understanding that, this coaching staff is pleased with him, but they still also want to see more. They want to see some of that full focus and investment, 100% knowledge of the playbook and doing everything right from a mental standpoint every single day. So, take what you see, again, with a grain of salt. It is good for his development, but if you're thinking that Quez Watkins is now this team's number 1 or number 2 wide receiver, I think that's where you've crossed the line a little bit and gone too far. We have to see a lot more.
Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast joining us every Monday and Wednesday here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN at Geoff Mosher NFL on Twitter. Also go to InsideTheBirds.com for all of their Eagles coverage all year long. Geoff, you mentioned number 1 receiver. To me, major positive, Devonta Smith with a helmet on, running individual drills, taking the jugs. The Eagles put the video out there on their Twitter account. That's kind of like their check sign to everybody. See, he's fine, nothing to worry about, running drills. So at least we know that Devonta Smith's knee injury is maybe a little more precautionary than it is serious.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's good to see him out here. When you see week to week on a guy, that's such it's like, does that mean 4 or 5 weeks or 1 or 2? And for example, a guy like Davion Taylor, you were hoping that it was week to week, sort of in the Devonta Smith sense, where he would be back within a week or 2. But apparently it's going to be longer, and that's really rough for him because he needed as many reps as he could get to begin with. So it's good to see that. And I think just for what I said on the wide receiver group, Josh, it's really important that Devonta is out there getting his rapport with Jalen Hurts, because the one thing about him is, even though he's a rookie, and why they drafted him so high and why they love him, is that he is all business all the time. He's a perfectionist at what he does. He's a master at his craft, and that's not just on the field, but in the classroom. When he steps at the NovaCare each day, even when he was hurt, you saw him quickly at the jugs machine, standing next to the head coaches. He's fully invested. And as we just talked about, and people who've listened to Inside the Birds know, the rest of this wide receiver room is a little bit of a challenge for the coaches. When we're talking about Hightower, we're talking about Watkins, we're talking about Jalen Reagor, right? Just, for different reasons for these three, they're just looking for more, always looking for more, want the maturity there, want the focus there, want the conditioning there. Travis Fulgham as well. So it's 4 guys that the coaches kind of have to constantly ride and coach up for different reasons. With Devonta Smith, they don't have to worry about that.
Speaking of the offense, one of the guys you wrote about over at InsideTheBirds.com, Tyree Jackson, the quarterback making the transition to tight end. And my big question going into Thursday night was, all right, we've seen him in practice, but how does he handle real contact in an NFL game against other guys who are trying to make an NFL roster? And I think you got to walk out of that saying, you know what? He did his job. He wasn't spectacular, but he did his job. He didn't get knocked off the ball. He wasn't like Tim Tebow and completely olaying a block like Tebow did. It's now infamous on Twitter now. No, he went out there, he did his job, he caught the ball, and he wasn't shied away from a guy maybe banging him once or twice.
No, I thought that there were a lot of encouraging signs from Tyree Jackson. Look, he's trying to make the team. He's trying to make the 53 as a fourth tight end. We know that. So if he doesn't, they'll try to bring him back on the practice squad. We'll see. They lost out on Noah Togiai last year with that same approach, by putting him on waivers, and then the Colts claimed him. But every day is a good day for development for Tyree Jackson. You're right. He has represented himself for a guy who has never played tight end before, has been a quarterback, is making the transition. You would expect him to have zero understanding of blocking, fundamentals, technique. He's not bad at it. He's not very good either, but you at least have a foundation from which to work, which is something you can not always say about guys who've played tight end in college for 4 years as far as blocking is concerned. So that's a good thing for him. He does catch the ball well. He is a huge target, obviously at 6'7", and he has some good athleticism there. So I think these next 3 weeks are really big for him. These next two preseason games, I should say, are also big. I'm very intrigued to see how he does. For him, when you start to do well, you want to just keep that up, as Nick Sirianni says, right? 1% every single day. He can't have any any valleys to go along with these peaks. He's got to keep rising the chart and get better every single day. And so far, he has.
Yeah, I think that shirt that the coaches were wearing, I think they need to sell that on the team store at this point. I mean, I think a lot of Eagle fans might buy that shirt by the start of the season. It's pretty slick shirt they have with all the sayings of all of his fundamentals on the shirt. But staying on the offense, one more thing, Geoff. I know it's only a conversation with the media, but when Mailata talked to the media today, he was very vocal about how he's still learning. He wanted to be playing more. How appreciative is of everything he's learned, of all the reps he's getting. He even dropped the F-bomb in the middle of the press conference saying, he's like, why did you effing take me out of the game, And, to me, I just like that mentality coming from him because he doesn't think he's arrived. He doesn't think he's special, even though everyone else thinks he's special. He looks at it as, I have a job to earn, and I think that'll benefit not just him, but the Eagles long-term this season.
Josh, he's had a wonderful camp. He's got a great mentality. He's got, again, you talk about the foundations from which to build from. You saw it last year. Was he perfect? No. Were there games that he struggled? Yes. But his struggles were due to learning the position. It's not like he needs any more of a mean streak. He started to learn how big and strong and powerful and massive he is and how to use that to his benefit. And everything right now is starting to come naturally to him, which is a good thing. Obviously I think it shows you the culture shock of how fast it's been for him. I mean, he's used to playing, second, third, fourth quarter, or just third and fourth quarter. He's used to playing a lot of snaps in the preseason. So he leaves after 10 snaps and he doesn't feel like that's enough because he's trying to be a sponge right now. But he also has to understand that with Andre Dillard out and not even playing that well to begin with, that if he even just twists his ankle, that's just one twisted ankle away from Brett Toth being the starting left tackle at the moment, or Matt Pryor, which was a disaster last year. So they need him healthy. And, the coaches have pretty much made it clear that while they value the preseason, they value the practice and the joint practices just enough. I mean, you've seen how much they try to get into shorter practices. You notice that Jalen Hurts only played the same amount of reps too. They're not going to overdo it in the preseason just so guys can learn. They feel like that's what training camp's all about. I think the big thing for Jordan Mailata now is dealing with speed rushers because that takes a different, your massiveness sometimes can work against you in that. And also dealing with when Seumalo comes back to left guard, just dealing with the line games, the stunts, the twists, the things that are a little bit more cerebral and require your peripheral awareness and spatial awareness as opposed to just physically asserting yourself. And there were areas where he could have done better last year. And he's another guy where I feel like the hype came so quickly because you saw some amazing elements for a guy who was a 7th-round pick who never even played football. But you also got to understand that he's going to face a lot of Pro Bowl and All-Pro pass rushers throughout the course of the year. And he's really, to be on that Jason Peters level, he gets it. You're right. He understands he's got a long way to go.
And the good news is Jason Peters is now with the Bears, so it's not the Eagles' problem anymore.
Which probably means now that he's not an Eagle, he's going to play 16 games, look like a Pro Bowler.
Well, I'm just curious, did the Bears sign Peters because Nick Foles recommended him, or because Ryan Pace just happened to not watch any game tape from last year?
That's a great question. And I think Doug Peterson stopped by their practice last week before. So maybe there was a little hype train, going on for Peters from Peterson and the others to sign Jason Peters. But no, honestly, the Bears, they have some pretty good components. We'll see what happens there at quarterback. They got a good receiver in Robinson. They have a good running back. They have a very good defense. It's their offensive line that's a big problem. If Jason Peters, I know we said this last year, right? But if he's still probably better than whoever they were going to throw out there at left tackle. He's just not that good anymore,
Geoff, let's flip over to the defense with the Eagles. I feel like a lot of people, if they watch the game on Thursday or they've been listening to you and Adam and all you guys over Inside the Birds, I think it's becoming very obvious that this defense, if nothing else, will be at least fundamentally better than last year. And I think that's something to be excited about, because if Hargrave is healthy and him, Metz, and Fletcher are going to be a great combination. We know that Josh Wett's playing well in camp. Talk about the defensive line for the Eagles, because there's no more wide nines. So this is going to be a different concept with this team moving forward.
Yeah, a guy like Javon Hargrave, Josh, it's easier to buy into him really emerging because he had a good second half last year. We know he was hurt. He missed all of camp. He was slowed up the first 5 or 6 games, but he has been a force on that defensive line this camp. And it's easier to believe in that than, say, someone like Quez Watkins, right, who only got on the field in limited doses last year. And we've seen wide receivers kind of have these great camps and then regress back to being just okay, or even not even making the team. So, but it's easier to say Javon Hargrave, who has this reputation already, who spent many years in Pittsburgh and was a good defensive tackle there and was a big free agent signing, and see what he's doing right now and saying, I believe that that's legit. That's going to carry over into the regular season. Because, honestly, there are times where he kind of looks like Fletcher Cox, just the way he's bull rushing and moving offensive guards left and right out of his way to get to the quarterback. So it's a great sign. They need it. I think that, again, the Eagles will be strong in the trenches. These guys stay healthy, and that will help them. And, yes, I also thought what stood out in game one, Josh, was that at the linebacker and secondary level, they were very crisp and clean, and they were physical, and they made their tackles, which is not always something that you see early in the preseason. So that was a good sign too.
Jonathan Gannon had some good things to say about Alex Singleton when he talked to the media today. I believe, from everything that I understand and everything you and Adam have said on the Inside the Birds pod, that it looks like it would be Singleton and Wilson as the two linebackers on the field for a lot of downs. So how important is for them to get Singleton ramped up, considering he missed so much time at the beginning of camp?
Well, I thought it was going to be important. Then he went out there, played 19 snaps, had 7 tackles. He was all over the place. If you remember that touchdown that Anthony McFarland ran in from the 1 or 2 yard line for Pittsburgh, Alex Singleton was the furthest guy away from McFarland, but he shot the gap right before the snap. And I don't know how he navigated his way through all that traffic, but he got his hand on McFarland's foot to slow him up. Now, I think Teron Jackson, the defensive end, probably should have done a better job of getting off the block there to make the stop once McFarland was slowed up, and didn't. So he wound up scoring the touchdown anyway. But I was actually amazed by how active Alex Singleton was. He seemed to just pick up from last year. And honestly, I don't know how you have a nickel defense out there that doesn't have Eric Wilson and Alex Singleton on it, unless maybe you're trying to rush the passer a little bit more with a stand-up, Sam, and maybe you have a Jannard Avery out there or Ryan Kerrigan. But that's specifically to kind of rush the passer. But when you're in your kind of nickel coverage defense, it's got to be Wilson and Singleton right now. And I will say this, TJ Edwards has lost some weight. He did last year also. He's in better shape. He gets in better shape every year. And I believe now he's more viable to this coaching staff as a nickel linebacker if somebody were to get hurt than last year when you had like Duke Riley or Nate Gary or somebody else in there. I think he's more viable. Those are your top 3 linebackers. But keep an eye on Patrick Johnson, because they really like him. He's a guy who at Tulane was kind of a pass rusher, but they're converting him to a Sam here, which could involve pass rush, but it also can involve dropping into coverage. They really like how he's coming along. He has a chance to make the team. He's playing well, and he's a really high intelligent, high character guy. So there'll be an interesting kind of battle there between him and Sean Bradley. I mean, Davion Taylor's going to make the team even, because he's a third-round pick and he's been hurt all camp, and he's got athleticism, pouring out of everything, every pore in his body. So even if he doesn't technically deserve it, they're going to give him a chance. So he's 4 and 5 he'd probably be your quote-unquote fourth linebacker behind those three I mentioned. But Patrick Johnson versus Sean Bradley for a fifth. And then I don't know how they count like the Kerrigans and the Averys and the Osmans, who can be linebackers but also pass rushers. It may not be your traditional numbers that you're keeping at certain positions because of the versatility there. But I do think Bradley and Johnson is a good battle to make this 53.
Geoff, one more before I let you go. Always appreciate your insights here on a Monday on the Sports Bash Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Kevon Wallace upgraded to limited at practice today with the groin. Is the hope still to have maybe him on the field for the Eagles this preseason? Because I feel like at least if he can play week 1 of the season, it makes the Rodney McLeod situation a little less desperate.
A little bit less. I mean, Kevon Wallace has a lot to prove himself. So even if he's healthy, it's not like when he's out there, you're like, oh, we've got this thing all settled. It's Kevon Wallace and Anthony Harris. However, groins are tricky, so you do hope that he gets back on the field soon. I will say, I thought Marcus Epps, again, played well in the preseason game, and again is having a decent camp. He had one last year, too. The coaches really liked the camp that he had. Did he have a great season? No, I don't know I think he was inconsistent, and then I think he was on the COVID list later in the year, and that might have set him back a little bit, but he has had a nice camp and did have a good preseason, so he's probably somebody that is, I don't know if he's on equal footing with Kevon Wallace, but they're competing to get the most playing time if Rodney McLeod is not back by the opener.
For more on the Eagles, in training camp, getting ready for the second preseason game, joint practices up there with them, and the Patriots headed that second preseason game. InsideTheBirds.com. Download the Inside the Birds podcast, hit that subscribe button, and Geoff will be back on Wednesday's edition of Football at 4 to talk more with the latest on the Eagles. Geoff, great stuff today. Have a good one.
All right, Josh. Have a great game. Great show. Have a great show, Josh.
I know what you meant. How about that?
Thank you. Appreciate it. You saved me again.
Geoff Mosher joins us every Monday and Wednesday here on 97.3 ESPN.